Don't move. Lucas Vance's voice dropped low behind me, steady and controlled, but there was something under it, something tight, something barely held together, and his hand hit the wall beside my head before I could even process what was happening, trapping me in place, his presence closing in like a storm I hadn't seen coming. My breath caught. Too close. Way too close. 10 minutes ago, we were arguing across a 12-foot conference table about quarterly projections and who messed up the numbers, and now the door was locked, the lights flickering from a sudden outage, and my entire body felt like it had been set on fire from the inside out. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself, but my knees didn't listen. They never do when things go wrong. And this was going very wrong. Back off, I managed, but my voice didn't sound like mine. It came out thinner, weaker, like it had already given up. Lucas didn't move. Of course he didn't. He never backed down. Not in meetings. Not in arguments. Not now. His scent hit me next, subtle at first, like cedar and cold rain, then stronger, wrapping around my senses until I couldn't tell where it ended and I began. My fingers curled against my own palm, nails pressing in like that would somehow ground me. It didn't. Nothing did. Ethan, he said, quieter now, like he was testing my name, like he wasn't sure what it would do to him if he said it too loud. I hated that. I hated him. I hated how my body reacted anyway. Your heat just hit. The words landed heavy, undeniable. No, that wasn't possible. I had my suppressants. I took them this morning. I always took them. You're wrong, I said quickly, shaking my head, even as warmth spread under my skin, crawling up my spine, making every breath feel too shallow, too fast. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. Not even close. My vision blurred at the edges, and I had to press my shoulder against the wall to stay upright. Lucas noticed. Of course he did. He notices everything. His jaw tightened, like he was fighting something invisible, something instinctive. You're not fine, he said, and there was no arrogance in it this time. Just certainty. That made it worse. I pushed at his chest, intending to create space, distance, anything, but my hand lingered for half a second too long, feeling the solid warmth beneath his shirt, and my brain short-circuited. Stupid. So stupid. Don't touch me, I whispered, even as my fingers betrayed me, curling slightly instead of pulling away. His hand moved then, not grabbing, not forcing, just hovering near my wrist like he was deciding whether he was allowed. I shouldn't, he admitted, voice rougher now, the control slipping just enough to notice. The air between us tightened, stretched thin. I forced myself to look up at him, really look, and for the first time since I met Lucas Vance, he didn't look untouchable. He looked strained, human, dangerous in a different way. Then don't, I said, but the words lacked bite. He exhaled slowly, like he was counting seconds, like he was trying to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. Too late, he murmured, almost to himself. His gaze flicked toward the door, then back to me, sharper now, more focused. You don't feel it? He asked quietly. I did. God, I did. The heat, the pull, the way the space between us felt charged, like something inevitable had already started and neither of us knew how to stop it. I shook my head anyway, stubborn even when I was falling apart. Lucas stepped closer, just an inch, maybe two, but it was enough. Everything in me reacted at once, breath hitching, thoughts scattering. Too close. Too much. Then listen carefully, he said, voice dropping again, low and steady and impossible to ignore. Because from this moment on, every alpha in this building is going to notice you. My stomach dropped. Panic flickered, sharp and sudden. And I forced out. His eyes held mine, dark and unreadable, but there was something fierce there now, something protective and possessive all at once. And I'm not letting any of them get near you. My pulse spiked so hard it felt like it was echoing in my ears, loud, uneven, impossible to ignore, and for a second I forgot how to breathe because the way Lucas said it did not sound like a warning, it sounded like a promise. I shook my head again, stubborn even as my body betrayed me, heat pooling, low and spreading outward in slow, relentless waves. You do not get to decide that, I said, but the words came out shaky, like they were slipping through my fingers before I could hold on to them. His gaze did not waver. If anything, it sharpened, like he was locking onto something only he could see. I do not need to decide, he replied quietly. Your scent already did. That hit harder than anything else. My stomach twisted, panic rising fast and sharp, because I could feel it now, really feel it. The way the air had changed, the way every inch of space around me felt too thin, too exposed. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could notice. The thought made my chest tighten. I pushed at him again, more urgently this time, trying to force space between us, but he caught my wrist before I could pull away. Not rough, not hurting, just steady, firm, impossible to ignore. My breath stuttered. Too close. Still too close. Let go. I whispered, but it lacked force, lacked conviction. He did not let go. Instead, his thumb shifted slightly against my wrist, a small movement that sent a strange, unwelcome shiver up my arm. I froze. He noticed that too. Of course he did. Lucas exhaled slowly, like he was trying to calm something inside himself, but the tension in his shoulders only grew. If I let you walk out like this, he said, voice lower now, quieter, you will not make it 10 feet before someone else picks up on it. My throat went dry. 10 feet. That was all it would take. The image hit me instantly, too vivid, too real, and my stomach dropped. I can handle it, I insisted, even though I already knew I could not. He tilted his head slightly, studying me, and there was something frustratingly calm about him, like he had already run through every possible outcome and decided mine for me. No, he said simply. You cannot. The certainty in his voice made something in my chest twist. I hated that he was right. I hated that he knew it. The lights flickered again, dimming the room just enough to make everything feel more enclosed, more intense, and suddenly the distance between us felt non-existent. My breathing sped up, shallow and uneven, and I pressed my back harder against the wall like it might steady me. It did not. Nothing did. Lucas stepped closer again, slow this time, deliberate, giving me time to stop him. I did not. I could not. My fingers curled weakly at my sides instead. Stay with me, he said, and it was not an order this time. It was quieter than that. Softer. That made it worse. Why do you even care? I managed, forcing the words out through the haze building in my head. You hate me. He paused, just for a second, and in that second something shifted. Subtle, but real. His grip on my wrist loosened, not releasing, just easing, like he was reminding himself I was not something to hold onto too tightly. I do not hate you, he said, and the words felt heavier than they should have. I blinked at him, thrown off balance in a completely different way now. That was new. That was not part of the script I had built in my head. You act like you do. I shot back, but it sounded weaker than before, less certain. He let out a quiet breath, almost like a humorless laugh. You argue with me in every meeting, challenge every decision I make, and somehow still think I do not notice you? My heart skipped. That was not what I expected him to say. Not even close. The heat in my body surged again, sharper this time, pulling my focus back under, and I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, trying to ground myself. When I opened them, he was still there, still watching me like I was something important, something he could not afford to look away from. You are not walking out of here alone, he added, voice steady again. But there was something protective threaded through it now, something I could not ignore. My pulse jumped. And if I try? I asked, breath unsteady. His gaze darkened just slightly, not threatening, but certain in a way that made my stomach flip. Then I follow, he said. Every step. I did not step away. That was the problem. My body knew it before my brain could catch up, before logic could rebuild itself into something solid enough to stand on. I stayed exactly where I was, pinned between the wall and Lucas's presence, my pulse climbing higher with every second that passed. You are not serious, I said, but the words came out thinner than I intended, like they had already lost the argument before it even started. He did not answer right away. Instead, his eyes flicked past me toward the door again, calculating, listening, like he was mapping out every possible thread in the building. The silence stretched. Tight. Uncomfortable. I am always serious, he said finally, and there was no edge to it, no sarcasm, just that same steady certainty that made my stomach twist. I exhaled shakily, trying to pull myself together, trying to remember how to function like a normal person, but the heat under my skin pulsed again, stronger this time, spreading outward in slow waves that made everything feel too close, too loud, too much. My fingers twitched at my sides, then curled into the fabric of my own sleeve like that would somehow anchor me. It did not. Nothing did. This is temporary, I muttered, more to myself than to him. It will pass. It had to pass. That was how this worked. That was how it always worked. Lucas shifted slightly, just enough that his shoulder almost brushed mine, and the near contact sent a sharp, unexpected jolt through me. I sucked in a breath, too quick, too shallow. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His jaw tightened again, like he was restraining something, holding it back by force of will alone. Not fast enough, he said quietly. I shook my head, frustrated now, the tension coiling tighter in my chest. You do not get to hover over me like this. I snapped, trying to push back, trying to reclaim even a fraction of control. I can take care of myself. He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet my eyes again, and something in his expression shifted, not softer exactly, but more focused, more intent. You think this is about control? He asked, voice low. It is not. That caught me off guard. Completely. My thoughts stumbled, tripping over themselves as I tried to follow. Then what is it about? I demanded, even as my voice lost some of its bite. He held my gaze for a long second, and the air between us seemed to still, like everything else in the room had faded out, leaving just the two of us in the middle of something neither of us had planned. It is about instinct, he said, and there was something raw under the words now, something honest in a way I was not used to from him. And right now, every instinct I have is telling me not to let you out of my sight. My breath caught again. That did not sound like the Lucas I knew. That sounded like someone else entirely. Or maybe it was him, just without the walls he usually kept up. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way that sentence settled somewhere deep and uncomfortable in my chest. That is not my problem, I said, but it came out quieter this time, less certain. He did not argue. He did not need to. Instead, he took a slow breath, like he was grounding himself, then released my wrist completely, the sudden absence of his touch leaving a strange, hollow feeling behind. I blinked at the space where his hand had been, momentarily thrown off balance. He stepped back half an inch. Not far. Not enough. Just enough to show he was choosing it. Fine, he said, voice even again. Then walk out. I froze. The door was right there. Maybe 6 feet away. Close enough to reach in a few steps. Far enough to feel impossible. My heart pounded harder, the heat flaring again like it was testing me, daring me to try. I could do it. I should do it. I had to do it. I took one step forward. Then another. The air shifted immediately, like something unseen had snapped into place. My breath hitched. My skin prickled. And from somewhere down the hallway, faint but unmistakable, I heard footsteps. More than one. I stopped. Completely. My stomach dropped. Lucas moved instantly, closing the distance I had just created in a single step, his presence back at my side, solid and unyielding. That is what I meant, he said quietly, not triumphant, not mocking, just certain. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. My pulse spiked, panic rising fast and sharp as the heat under my skin flared again, stronger now, impossible to ignore. I did not move. I could not. And without thinking, without planning it, my hand reached out and caught the edge of his sleeve. His eyes flicked down to it, then back up to me, something unreadable passing through his expression. Stay, he said, softer this time. I did. The footsteps did not slow down. If anything, they grew louder, echoing faintly through the hallway just beyond the door, steady and approaching, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to move, to hide, to do something other than stand there frozen with my hand still gripping the edge of Lucas's sleeve like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My pulse was out of control now, too fast, too uneven, heat rolling through me in waves that made it hard to think, harder to breathe. Someone is coming, I whispered, the words barely more than air, but Lucas heard them anyway. He always did. His posture shifted instantly, subtle but decisive, like a switch had flipped somewhere deep inside him. I know, he said, calm, too calm, and that somehow made everything worse. I tightened my grip without meaning to, fingers curling more firmly into the fabric of his sleeve. He glanced down at the movement, then back at my face, something unreadable flickering in his eyes before it settled into something sharper, more focused. Protective. The word hit me before I could stop it. Protective. No, that did not make sense. This was Lucas. Lucas, who argued with me in every meeting, who never gave an inch, who looked at me like I was a problem to solve, not someone to protect. The footsteps were right outside now. Close. Too close. Voices followed, low and casual, unaware of what was happening on the other side of the door. My stomach dropped. Lucas, I said, quieter this time, the edge gone from my voice without my permission, replaced by something else, something I did not want to name. He moved then, not away from me, but closer, just enough that his shoulder aligned with mine, his presence creating a barrier between me and the door without blocking me completely. It was a calculated position. Intentional. Every part of it deliberate. Stay behind me. He murmured, low enough that the words barely carried, but they landed anyway, heavy and certain. I should have argued. I should have pushed back, told him to stop acting like he had any right to tell me what to do. Instead, I shifted half a step closer. Without thinking, the movement automatic, instinctive, like my body had already decided something my brain was still trying to deny. The handle on the door rattled. Once. Then again. My breath caught. The heat surged again, sharper this time, reacting to the proximity, the tension, the possibility of being seen like this, vulnerable and exposed in a way I could not control. I pressed closer without meaning to, my shoulder brushing lightly against Lucas's arm. He went still for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then his stance adjusted, grounding, steady, like he was anchoring both of us in place. Occupied, he called out, voice even, controlled, carrying just enough authority to make it believable without sounding forced. Silence followed. A pause. Then muffled voices, shifting, uncertain. "Oh, sorry," someone said from the other side, footsteps hesitating before turning away. The sound of them retreating echoed down the hall, growing fainter with each step until it disappeared completely. The tension in the room did not. Not even close. I exhaled slowly, but it came out shaky, uneven, like my body had forgotten how to do something as simple as breathe normally. My hand was still on his sleeve. I had not let go. I should let go. I did not. Lucas did not move away either. He stayed exactly where he was, close enough that I could feel the steady rise and fall of his breathing, controlled in a way mine was not. "They are gone," he said quietly. I nodded, even though he could not see it from this angle. The heat under my skin pulsed again, less sharp this time, but deeper, more insistent, like it was settling in instead of fading out. That was not good. That was very not good. "This is getting worse," I admitted under my breath, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He did not respond right away. For a second, there was just silence, thick and charged, stretching between us. Then, carefully, deliberately, he turned his head slightly, just enough that I could see his profile, sharp and focused and far too close. "I know," he said, and there was something different in his voice now. Not just control, not just restraint. Something heavier. Something that made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. "Then do something," I said, frustration bleeding through despite everything else, because I did not know what else to do, and he seemed like the only person in the room who did. His eyes shifted back to mine, steady, unwavering, and for a moment the world narrowed down to just that, just the space between us and the unspoken tension filling it. "I am," he said quietly, and somehow, that felt like both an answer and a warning. The way he said it stayed with me, settled under my skin in a way that had nothing to do with the heat and everything to do with him. And that was worse, so much worse, because I could not separate the two anymore. My fingers finally loosened from his sleeve, but the absence of that contact felt wrong, like I had just let go of something I was not supposed to release. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus, to think, to be rational for at least 5 seconds. "You standing here is not fixing anything," I said, even though my voice lacked the sharp edge it usually had when I talked to him. He did not react to the tone. He rarely did. Instead, he watched me, really watched me, like he was tracking every shift in my expression, every uneven breath, every tiny movement I could not control. It made me feel exposed in a way I was not used to. "It is," he replied calmly. "You are still steady." I blinked, thrown off again. Steady was not the word I would have used. My pulse was still racing, my thoughts scattered, my body too aware of everything at once. But compared to a few minutes ago, compared to the moment I almost stepped into that hallway, He was not wrong. That realization annoyed me more than it should have. Temporary. I muttered again, clinging to that word like it was something solid. This is just temporary. Lucas's gaze shifted slightly, like he was considering that, weighing it, and for a second I thought he might argue. He did not. Then we manage it, he said instead, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Manage it. As if this was just another problem on a spreadsheet, something that could be broken down into steps and solved with enough logic. I let out a short, breathless laugh that did not sound like amusement. You cannot manage this, I said, shaking my head, even as another wave of heat rolled through me, slower this time but deeper, more insistent, like it was settling in instead of burning out. My hand lifted slightly, then dropped again, useless, unsure where to go. You do not even like me. The words slipped out before I could stop them, quieter than I intended, edged with something I did not want to examine too closely. Lucas stilled. Completely. The shift was subtle, but I felt it, like the air had tightened again in a different way. He looked at me for a long second, longer than usual, like he was deciding something, and when he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Not louder, not softer, just clearer. That is where you are wrong, he said. My chest tightened. I hated that reaction. I hated that those 6 words landed harder than anything else he had said so far. Then what is this? I asked, gesturing vaguely between us, frustration rising again because none of this made sense. Not the situation, not him, not the way my own body kept reacting to everything he did. You hovering, blocking doors, acting like I am your responsibility? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow breath, like he was choosing his next words carefully, which was new, because Lucas Vance did not hesitate. He stated. He decided. He moved forward. Hesitation was not part of his vocabulary. Until now. It is not responsibility, he said finally, and there was something steady in it, something grounded that made it hard to dismiss. It is awareness. I frowned slightly, confused despite myself. Awareness of what? His gaze did not leave mine. Not for a second. Of you, he said. The room felt smaller after that. Tighter. Like the walls had shifted an inch closer without anyone noticing. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself again, but my breathing still would not cooperate. Still uneven, still too fast. That does not explain anything, I said, even though my voice had dropped again, softer without permission. He took half a step closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough to close the distance that had formed when I let go of his sleeve, and the heat reacted immediately, flaring in response, my body betraying me all over again. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. It explains enough, he said quietly. You are not alone in this. My heart skipped. I did not like how that sounded. I did not like how it felt. Because for the first time since this started, the panic was not the only thing filling my chest. There was something else there now, something quieter, more dangerous, and I did not know what to do with it. The words echoed longer than they should have, settling into the space between us in a way that made it impossible to ignore, and I did not know what bothered me more, the fact that he said it or the fact that part of me believed him. Not alone. The phrase repeated in my head, quieter each time, like it was testing the edges of something I was not ready to feel. I exhaled slowly, trying to push it aside, trying to focus on something real, something I could control, but my body had already decided otherwise, heat still pulsing under my skin in slow, steady waves that refused to fade. I did not ask for this, I said, my voice low, strained, not directed at him exactly, but he heard it anyway. He always did. I know, Lucas replied, and there was no judgment in it, no impatience, just acknowledgement, simple and direct. That made it worse. I shifted my weight slightly, trying to ground myself, but the room still felt off, tilted in a way that made everything harder to process. Then stop acting like you have to fix it, I added, sharper this time, because I needed something to push against, something familiar, and arguing with him was the easiest thing I knew how to do. He did not rise to it. He did not snap back or counter like he usually would. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was, steady and unmoving, like he had decided something and was not going to be pulled off course. I am not fixing it, he said. I am staying. That should not have mattered. It should not have landed the way it did, quiet and heavy at the same time, but it did. I looked away first, breaking eye contact because holding it felt like too much, like standing too close to something I did not understand. My gaze dropped to the floor, to the faint reflection of the overhead lights on polished tile, anything to avoid the intensity of his attention. "You make it sound simple," I muttered. "It is not." "No," he agreed easily. "It is not." Another pause. Not awkward. Not empty. Just there. The kind that filled the room without needing to be broken. My fingers twitched again, restless, unsure, and I pressed them against my palm to stop the movement. It did not help much. The heat surged again, not sharp this time, but deeper, more constant, like a steady current I could not step out of. I closed my eyes for a second, just one, trying to center myself, trying to remember how to breathe evenly. When I opened them again, he was still there, still watching, still steady in a way that made everything else feel unbalanced by comparison. "This is not going away anytime soon," I admitted, quieter now, the fight draining out of my voice whether I liked it or not. He nodded once, like he had already come to that conclusion on his own. "Then we adapt," he said. Adapt. Another simple word that should not have carried so much weight, but did. I let out a slow breath, shoulders dropping slightly as tension shifted into something else, something less sharp, but no less intense. "You are too calm about this," I said, a hint of disbelief slipping through despite everything. His expression changed, just slightly, the smallest shift in his eyes that most people would probably miss. I did not. "I am not calm," he said quietly. That caught me off guard again. Completely. I looked back at him, really looked this time, and for a brief second I saw it. The restraint, the tension held tightly beneath the surface, controlled but not gone. It made my chest tighten in a different way, one I could not explain. "Then why do you look like you are?" I asked, softer now, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He held my gaze for a moment, then another, like he was deciding how much to say, how much to let through. "Because if I do not," he said slowly, "this gets harder for both of us." The honesty in that hit deeper than anything else he had said so far. I did not have a response for it. Not a good one. Not one that made sense. So I stayed quiet, standing there in the middle of a situation I could not control, next to someone I did not understand, with a body that refused to listen and a mind that was starting to question things it had been certain about just minutes ago. And somehow, that felt more dangerous than anything else. The silence stretched again, but this time it did not feel empty. It felt charged, like something was building just beneath the surface, waiting for the smallest shift to break through. I could still feel the heat, steady now, less chaotic but more persistent, like it had settled in and decided it was not going anywhere anytime soon. That realization sat heavy in my chest. "How long?" I asked quietly, not looking at him at first, because I was not sure I wanted to see his expression when he answered. A second passed, then another. "Hours," Lucas said. "Maybe longer." My stomach dropped. "Hours." The word echoed louder than it should have, stretching out into something far more overwhelming than I was ready to handle. I let out a slow breath, but it came out uneven, catching halfway through like my body had forgotten how to regulate itself properly. "I cannot stay here for hours," I said, more to myself than to him, already feeling the edges of panic creeping back in. The room suddenly felt smaller again, the walls a little closer, the air a little thinner. Lucas shifted slightly, just enough to draw my attention back to him without crowding me. "You will not," he said. I frowned, finally looking up at him again. "Then what?" He held my gaze, steady, calculating, like he had already worked through this scenario step by step. "We move," he said. Simple. Direct. Of course it would be. I shook my head immediately, the idea alone making my pulse spike again. "You just said I would not make it 10 feet. I pointed out, frustration rising, because this felt like a contradiction I did not have the energy to untangle. "I will not," I corrected quickly, because that was the truth. I cannot even stand still without. I trailed off, clenching my jaw as another wave rolled through me, slower this time but heavier, pulling my focus inward whether I wanted it to or not. Lucas did not interrupt. He waited. That was new too. When I finally forced myself to continue, my voice had dropped again, quieter, more honest than I intended. Without losing control. The words hung there, heavier than anything else I had said so far. He did not dismiss them. He did not downplay them. Instead, he nodded once, like he understood exactly what I meant. Then you do not move alone, he said. I blinked at him. That is not. I stopped myself, because arguing suddenly felt pointless, like pushing against something that was not going to give. He had already decided this. I could see it in the set of his shoulders, the steadiness in his posture. He was not going to leave. Not now. Not until this was over. That realization should have annoyed me. It did. But it also did something else, something quieter, something I did not want to acknowledge. Where would we even go? I asked instead, because that felt safer than questioning why he was still here. His eyes flicked briefly toward the far side of the room, then back to me. Private office, he said. Down the hall. Limited traffic. My chest tightened again, but not from panic this time. From proximity. From the idea of moving through the building like this, with him right next to me, aware of every step, every breath, every shift in my body. And if someone sees us? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. His expression did not change. Not even a little. They will not, he said. The certainty in his voice should not have been reassuring. It was. That bothered me more than anything else. I let out a slow breath, then another, trying to steady myself enough to think clearly. This is a bad idea, I said, even as my feet shifted slightly, like they were already preparing to move. Lucas's gaze dropped briefly to that movement, then lifted again, a faint flicker of something passing through his eyes. Not amusement. Not quite. Something quieter. Probably, he agreed. That caught me off guard. Again, he did not argue. He did not insist it was the only option. He just acknowledged it. And then, after a beat, he added, softer, but it is the best one we have. I hesitated. 1 second. 2. My pulse still racing, my thoughts still scattered, my body still too aware of everything at once. Then I nodded. Just once. Small. Reluctant. But real. Lucas did not waste time. He stepped back half a pace, just enough to give me space without losing proximity, his posture shifting into something more alert, more focused. Stay close, he said, not as an order, not quite, but close enough that my body reacted anyway, instinctively aligning with his movement before I could question it. I took a breath, then another, steadying myself as best I could. I hate this, I muttered under my breath. I know, he replied quietly, and somehow, that made it easier to take the first step. I did not think. If I thought, I would have stopped. I would have backed away, put distance between us, forced logic back in a place where it belonged. Instead, I stepped forward. 1 step, then another. The door opened, and the hallway stretched out in front of me, longer than it had ever looked before, like every foot of distance had doubled overnight. My pulse jumped immediately, sharp and fast, the heat reacting to the open space, to the possibility of being seen, noticed, read too easily by anyone who walked past. I faltered. Just for a second. Lucas did not. He moved with me, not in front, not behind, but right at my side, close enough that I could feel the steady presence of him without him touching me, like a line I could follow without looking. Keep walking, he said quietly, and the words landed steady, grounding in a way I did not want to admit. I focused on that instead of everything else. On the rhythm of my steps. On the sound of his breathing, even and controlled, a contrast to my own uneven inhale and exhale. The hallway lights hummed softly overhead, fluorescent and too bright, making everything feel sharper, more exposed. Every door we passed felt like a risk. Every corner felt like a threat. Too open. Too visible. My fingers curled slightly at my sides, then tightened into fists, trying to hold on to something, anything. It did not help. Nothing did. Halfway down the hall, voices echoed faintly from somewhere ahead. My stomach dropped instantly. I slowed without meaning to, my steps faltering again, hesitation creeping in before I could stop it. Lucas noticed immediately. He always did. Do not stop, he murmured, just loud enough for me to hear, and there was something different in his tone now. Not just calm. Not just steady. Focused. Protective. The words surfaced again, uninvited, and I pushed it away just as quickly. There are people, I said under my breath, tension tightening in my chest as the voices grew clearer, closer. I know, he replied. No hesitation. No doubt. Just certainty. He adjusted his pace slightly, not faster, not slower, just enough to match mine exactly, keeping me moving without forcing it. Stay with me, he added, quieter this time. I did not argue. I should have. I did not. The voices turned the corner ahead of us. Two co-workers deep in conversation, not looking up yet, not noticing, but they would. Any second now. My pulse spiked again, heat flaring in response, sharp and immediate, and I felt it, that shift in the air, that invisible signal that something was off, something was different. Too late. I stopped. Completely. My body locked in place before I could override it, panic rising fast and sudden. Lucas stepped in without hesitation, closing the small gap I had left between us, his presence solid and immediate at my side. Not touching. Not quite. But close enough to anchor me. Look at me, he said, low and steady, cutting through the noise in my head like a clean line. I did. Instinctively. His eyes held mine, sharp and focused, and for a second everything else faded. The hallway, the voices, the pressure building under my skin. Just him. Just that steady, unyielding presence. Breathe, he said. One word. Simple. Direct. I inhaled. Shaky. Uneven. But I did it. The co-workers passed us a second later, footsteps and voices moving by without stopping, without turning, without noticing anything at all. I did not realize I had been holding my breath until they were gone. My shoulders dropped slightly, tension releasing just enough to let me move again. Lucas did not step away. He stayed exactly where he was, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him without contact, like a boundary drawn around me that nothing else could cross. You are fine, he said quietly. I was not even close, but I was still standing, still moving, still here. And somehow, that was enough to take the next step. Then the next. The office door came into view at the end of the hall, closer now, real, reachable. My pulse still raced, my body still too aware, but the panic had shifted, dulled at the edges by something steadier. Something that felt dangerously like trust. I swallowed hard, pushing that thought away immediately. Do not get used to this, I muttered under my breath. Lucas glanced at me briefly, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. I was not planning to, he said. But he did not move away. The door was right there, close enough that I could see the brushed metal handle, the faint reflection of overhead lights on its surface, the small nameplate beside it that suddenly felt like the only safe place in the entire building. My steps slowed anyway, not because I wanted to stop, but because my body was lagging behind my mind again, caught somewhere between relief and the lingering pull of the heat still coiled under my skin. Lucas noticed. Of course he did. He always did. Keep going, he said quietly, not pushing, not forcing, just there, steady at my side like he had been the entire time. I took one more step, then another. The distance closed. My hand lifted toward the handle, but paused halfway, fingers hovering like I had forgotten how to complete something as simple as opening a door. The heat pulsed again, slower now but deeper, a steady reminder that this was not over, not even close. I exhaled, trying to steady my hand, but it trembled slightly anyway. I have it, Lucas said, and before I could respond, he reached past me, close enough that I felt the shift in air, the subtle warmth of him near my shoulder, and the door clicked open with a quiet, controlled motion. He did not touch me, not once, but the awareness of him was everywhere. Inside, he added, stepping back just enough to give me space without actually moving away. I did not argue. I stepped in. The office was dimmer than the hallway, the overhead lights off, replaced by the softer glow of a desk lamp in the corner. The space felt smaller, enclosed, but in a different way. Not suffocating. Contained. Safe. The door closed behind us with a soft click, and the sound settled something in my chest that I had not realized was still tight. My shoulders dropped slightly, tension easing just enough to let me breathe a little more evenly. Not normal. Not even close. But better. Lucas remained near the door, his posture still alert, still focused, like he was not fully letting his guard down even now. I moved a few steps farther into the room, putting a small amount of space between us, enough that I could think without the constant awareness of his proximity pressing in on every sense. Or at least, that was the idea. Asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound more in control than I felt. Behind me, I heard the faint shift of movement as he stepped away from the door, not closing the distance completely, but not staying as far back as before either. We wait, he said. I let out a quiet, humorless laugh, shaking my head slightly. That is not a plan. It is for now, he replied, calm as ever, and there was something frustratingly reassuring about it. I turned back to face him, crossing my arms loosely, more for something to do than anything else. And you are just going to stand there the whole time? I asked, raising an eyebrow slightly despite everything. His expression did not change. Not even a little. Yes, he said. No hesitation. No doubt. Just that same steady certainty that had followed me from the conference room to the hallway and now into this space. I stared at him for a second, longer than necessary, trying to find something in his expression that made sense, something familiar I could push against. I did not find it. What I found instead was something else. Something quieter. Something that made the room feel smaller again, but not in a way that made me want to leave. I looked away first, exhaling slowly as the heat pulsed again, softer this time, but still there, still present, still impossible to ignore. You are impossible, I muttered under my breath. Lucas did not respond right away. Then, after a beat, quieter than before, he said, "You are still here." I froze, just for a second, because he was right, and I did not know what to do with that. I did not respond right away. I could not, because the moment he said it, something shifted again, subtle but undeniable, like a line I had been standing behind without realizing it had just disappeared. You are still here. The words echoed, quiet but persistent, settling somewhere deeper than they should have. I exhaled slowly, turning away from him again, like putting physical distance between us would somehow create space in my head too. It did not. Nothing did. The heat pulsed again, steady and insistent, threading through every thought, every movement, making it impossible to focus on anything for too long. I moved toward the window, stopping just short of it, my hand hovering near the glass, but not quite touching. The outside world looked normal. Cars moving, people walking, everything exactly as it should be. And here I was, completely off balance in a way I could not fix. I am here because I do not have a better option, I said finally, my voice quieter than before, lacking the usual edge I relied on. It sounded weaker than I wanted. I hated that. Behind me, I heard the faint shift of Lucas moving, not closer exactly, but not staying still either. He was always adjusting, always aware, always present in a way that made ignoring him impossible. You had options, he replied. I frowned slightly, turning just enough to glance back at him. Not good ones, I said, because that was the truth. Walking out into that hallway alone had not been an option. Not really. He held my gaze for a second, then nodded once, like he accepted that without needing to argue it. The room fell quiet again after that, but not empty. Never empty. The silence between us felt full, charged, like it was holding something neither of us had said yet. I shifted my weight slightly, the movement restless, unsettled, my body still too aware, too reactive. You can stop watching me like that? I muttered, even though I did not look at him when I said it. A small pause followed. Then, I am not, he said. I let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh if it had any humor in it. That is a lie. Another pause. Shorter this time. Then I am making sure you are okay, he corrected. I turned fully at that, leaning back slightly against the edge of the desk, arms crossing again without thinking, a barrier that felt thinner than it should have. I am not okay, I said plainly. There was no point pretending otherwise. Not here. Not now. His expression did not change, but something in his posture did, a slight shift that made him seem less distant, less controlled in a way that was hard to define. I know, he said. The honesty in it landed again, heavier this time, because it did not feel like an observation. It felt like acknowledgement. I looked away first, my gaze dropping to the floor again, tracing the faint lines between tiles like they might give me something to focus on. They did not. My thoughts kept circling back to him, to the way he had followed, stayed, adjusted without hesitation, like none of this had ever been a question for him. You could have left, I said quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Back in the conference room. In the hallway. Here. Each point hung there, marking moments where he could have stepped away. He did not. I felt his gaze on me again, steady, unwavering. I could have, he agreed. I waited. 1 second. 2. But you did not, I said, because the silence after that felt incomplete without it. He did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower than before, more deliberate. No, that was it. Just that. No explanation. No justification. Just a simple, solid answer that somehow carried more weight than anything else he had said. My chest tightened again, not from panic this time, but from something else, something unfamiliar enough that I did not know what to call it. I pushed off the desk, pacing once across the room before stopping again, my movements restless, uneven. "You are making this complicated," I said, more to myself than to him, because this was not how this was supposed to go. This was supposed to be simple, temporary, something I got through alone, like everything else. "It already is," he replied quietly. I stilled, because he was right. It was. And it had been from the moment he said my name differently, from the moment he stayed instead of walking away. The heat pulsed again, softer now but deeper, and I closed my eyes for a second, just long enough to steady myself before opening them again. When I did, he was still there, still watching, still present in a way that made everything else feel less certain. "This changes nothing," I said, the words automatic, defensive, something I needed to say even if I was not entirely sure it was true anymore. Lucas held my gaze, unflinching, and for a second I thought he might argue. He did not. "We will see," he said instead. And somehow, that felt like the most dangerous answer of all. The words lingered, longer than they should have, settling into the space between us like something unfinished, something waiting to unfold whether I wanted it to or not. "We will see." I exhaled slowly, turning away again, because holding his gaze felt like standing too close to a question I was not ready to answer. The heat had not eased. If anything, it had changed, less sharp now, but heavier, like it had sunk deeper instead of fading out, threading through my thoughts in a way that made everything feel slower, thicker, harder to ignore. I pressed my hand lightly against the edge of the desk again, grounding myself in something solid, something predictable. It helped. A little. "You keep saying things like that?" I muttered, more to break the silence than anything else, because the quiet in this room felt different, too aware, too focused on everything neither of us was saying. Behind me, I heard him shift slightly, not moving closer, not stepping away, just adjusting like he always did, controlled even in stillness. "Because they are true," he said simply. I let out a quiet breath that might have been frustration, might have been something else. "That does not make them helpful." A pause followed. Short, measured, control. It made my chest tighten in a way I could not explain. "Then why are you still so calm?" I asked, because it did not make sense, not fully, not when I could see the effort it was taking for him to stay that way. His gaze met mine, steady, unwavering, and for a second I thought he might deflect, might redirect like he usually did. He did not. "Because if I am not," he said slowly, "this becomes harder for you." The answer landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. I blinked at him, caught off guard in a way I could not hide this time. "You keep saying that," I said, quieter now, less defensive, more confused. "Like this is about me." "It is," he said. No hesitation, no qualification, just that. My breath caught again, not from the heat this time, but from the weight of those words, from the way he said them like they were obvious, like there was no other interpretation. I looked away again, because holding his gaze felt like too much, like standing too close to something that might pull me in if I let it. My fingers tightened slightly against the desk, grounding, anchoring, trying to keep myself steady. "You do not get to decide that," I said, but the words lacked force, lacked the certainty they should have carried. He did not argue. He did not push. Instead, he took a slow breath, like he was giving me space without actually stepping back. "I am not deciding," he said quietly. "I am responding." I stilled at that, because that was different. That was not control. That was not dominance. That was choice. His choice. To stay. To adjust. To follow through on something he had not fully explained. The realization settled slowly, heavy and unfamiliar. "You could still walk out," I said, softer now, testing it, not sure why I needed to hear his answer again. His gaze did not shift, not even slightly. "So could you," he replied. That was not an answer. Not really. It was a mirror, reflecting the question back at me in a way that made it impossible to ignore. I exhaled slowly, looking down again, tracing the edge of the desk with my fingertips like I had earlier, trying to hold on to something simple, something clear. "I am not leaving," I said finally, the words quiet but certain in a way I had not expected. The moment they left my mouth, I felt it, that shift again, subtle but real, like something had settled into place. Lucas did not react immediately. When he did, it was small, almost unnoticeable. A slight change in his posture. A fraction of tension easing. "Good," he said. Just that. No explanation. No elaboration. Just a single word that somehow carried more weight than it should have. I looked up at him again, and for a second the room felt smaller, not suffocating, not overwhelming, just contained. Focused. Like everything had narrowed down to this moment, this space, this strange, shifting dynamic I still did not understand. The heat pulsed again, steady and constant, and I let out a slow breath, no longer fighting it as hard as I had before. Not accepting it. Not yet. But not denying it either. "This still does not make sense," I said, quieter now, less certain, more honest than I intended. Lucas held my gaze, steady as ever, and this time, when he spoke, his voice was softer. Not weaker, just closer. "It does not have to," he said. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something I was not ready for. The air in the room shifted again, not suddenly, not sharply, but in a slow, almost imperceptible way, like something had settled into place without either of us fully acknowledging it. "It does not have to." His words lingered, quiet but persistent, threading through my thoughts in a way that made it harder to hold on to the certainty I had before. I exhaled slowly, my shoulders lowering just a fraction, the tension in my body changing shape rather than disappearing. The heat was still there, steady and deep, but it no longer felt like it was dragging me under. It felt contained, managed. Not by me. That realization hit before I could stop it. I straightened slightly, pushing off the desk again, pacing once across the small office before stopping near the opposite wall. Distance. I needed distance. Even if it was only a few feet. Even if it did not actually change anything. "This is temporary," I said again, but the words sounded different this time, less like a fact and more like something I was trying to convince myself of. So far, Lucas did not answer right away. He held my gaze, unflinching, like he was deciding how much to say, how much to leave unsaid. The silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, not empty, just waiting. Then, slowly, he took a step closer. Not enough to crowd me. Not enough to force anything. Just enough to shift the space between us again, to make it feel smaller, more focused. My breath caught, just for a second. "Because leaving would be the wrong choice," he said quietly. The words were simple. Too simple. But the way he said them, steady and deliberate, made them feel heavier than anything else. I frowned slightly, confusion mixing with something else I could not quite name. "That is not an answer," I said, even though my voice lacked the sharpness it usually carried. He did not argue. Instead, he held my gaze, steady as ever, and for a moment I thought he might say more. He did not. "It is enough," he replied. The room felt smaller again after that, but not in a way that made me want to step back. In a way that made me stay exactly where I was. The heat pulsed again, steady and constant, but it no longer felt like the center of everything. Something else had taken its place. Something quieter. Something more dangerous. I exhaled slowly, my thoughts shifting, adjusting in a way I was not ready for. "You are not making this easier," I said under my breath. Lucas's expression did not change, but there was a faint shift in his eyes, something almost unreadable passing through before settling again. "I am not trying to," he said. That should not have made sense. It did, and that was the problem. I looked at him for a long second, longer than necessary, trying to find something that grounded me, something that made this feel normal again. I did not find it. Instead, I felt that same shift, deeper now, more settled, like something had already started and neither of us was going to walk away from it. The realization hit quietly, but it stayed. And for the first time since this began, I did not immediately push it away. The realization did not crash into me all at once. It settled, quiet, steady, like something that had been building for longer than I wanted to admit, finally finding its place. I did not move, not forward, not back, just stayed. And somehow, that felt like the loudest decision I had made all day. The heat was still there, a constant presence under my skin, but it no longer felt like the center of everything. It was just one part of it now, not the only part. That thought should have been alarming. It was. But it also did something else, something quieter, something I did not push away this time. I exhaled slowly, my gaze drifting for a second before settling back on him again, like it had learned the pattern without asking permission. Lucas had not moved. Not really. Still close enough to matter. Still far enough to give me space. Always that balance. Always that control. But now I could see it differently. Not just control. Choice. He was choosing every inch of distance. Every second of stillness. That made it worse. Or better. I did not know anymore. This changes things, I said finally, the words coming out quieter than anything I had said before, less defensive, more real. He did not interrupt. Did not correct. Just watched, like he was waiting to see where I would go with it. I swallowed, the weight of it settling a little deeper as I continued. Not because of this, I added, gesturing vaguely. The heat, the situation, everything that had forced us into this space. But because you stayed. The room went still. Not silent. Still. Like everything had narrowed down to that one point. Lucas's expression did not shift dramatically. He was not that kind of person. But something changed. Subtle. Real. His shoulders eased just a fraction. His gaze softened. Not weaker. Just less guarded. I told you, he said quietly. Leaving would have been the wrong choice. I let out a breath that felt heavier than it should have, my fingers relaxing slightly at my sides as some of the tension I had been holding on to finally shifted into something else. You keep saying that, I replied, but there was no bite in it now, no edge, just a quiet acknowledgement that I did not fully understand what he meant. He did not explain. He never explained more than he needed to. Instead, he took a small step closer. Not enough to overwhelm. Not enough to push. Just enough to close the distance that had been there before. My breath caught, just for a second, but I did not step back. That mattered more than anything else. The space between us felt different now. Not tense, not forced, just there, real. Then stop trying to understand it all at once, he said, voice low, steady, like he was guiding something instead of controlling it. Just stay. The words echoed, simple and direct, but they landed deeper than they should have. I looked at him for a long second, longer than necessary, longer than I should have, searching for something I could push against, something familiar. I did not find it. What I found instead was something steady, something that had been there from the beginning, but I had only just started to see it clearly. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest shifting again, not gone, not resolved, but no longer sharp enough to fight against. You are asking for a lot, I said quietly. He did not hesitate. I know. That was it. No justification. No apology. Just acknowledgement. I let out a quiet breath, my gaze dropping for a second before lifting again, meeting his without the same resistance as before. The heat pulsed again, steady and constant, but it no longer felt like something I had to escape. It felt like something I had to get through. And somehow, I was not doing that alone anymore. That thought settled in, quieter this time, less overwhelming, more certain. I did not push it away. Not this time. This does not mean I trust you, I said, the words automatic, a last line of defense that felt thinner than it should have. Lucas held my gaze, unflinching, and for the first time, there was something almost resembling a faint, quiet understanding in his expression. I know, he said. And then, after a brief pause, softer, but you did not leave. The words lingered, heavier than anything else. Because he was right. I had not. And for the first time since this started, I did not know if I wanted to.